a simple woman in a plain white dress steps into the prestigious Royal Gambit Chess Club. Her arrival, though unremarkable to her, doesn't go unnoticed by the crowd. She's an outsider here. Her humble appearance starkly contrasts with the polished elite members who frequent the club. Grace Sullivan, at 35, carries herself with quiet confidence. But today, her calm demeanor is met with judgmental stares and thinly veiled disapproval. Victor Sterling, the club's reigning champion, is seated at his usual table, watching with amusement as Grace enters. He surveys her for a moment, raising an eyebrow in surprise at her presence. Grace pauses just inside the door, scanning the room with quiet intensity. She's not bothered by the scrutinizing glances from the other members. Her eyes quickly adjust to the scene, noting the meticulous placement of the chess pieces on nearby tables and the subtle flicker of competitive tension in the air. Despite her simple dress and understated appearance, there's an unspoken depth to her presence. It's clear from the moment she walks in that Grace is no ordinary woman. Her reserved aura and the way she observes the chess games reveal a sharp mind, one that recognizes the intricacies of the game. The question lingers in the air. Who is she, and what is she doing in this opulent space, filled with the crème de la crème of the chess world? Victor, always one to indulge in some light entertainment, watches her for a moment longer. He leans over to his friend Charles Westwood, seated nearby, and asks, "Who's that?" His voice is tinged with curiosity, but there's a trace of superiority in his tone. Charles shrugs nonchalantly. "No idea. Probably just someone's housekeeper or a lost tourist. Doesn't belong here." Victor chuckles under his breath. He's used to being the center of attention, the untouchable chess champion of the club. At 42, he's an imposing figure, his salt and pepper hair and immaculate navy suit signaling wealth, power, and status. His custom platinum cufflinks, shaped like chess knights, glint in the light as he studies Grace. She's not like the other women he's used to, well-dressed, well-groomed, and part of the club's high society. She doesn't belong, or so he assumes. "Well, maybe we've found some entertainment for the evening after all," Victor says, his eyes lingering on Grace as he rises from his seat. He strides confidently across the room, every movement deliberate, his eyes never leaving Grace. The crowd takes notice. Conversations pause as Victor's trajectory catches the attention of the members. His challenges, after all, are legendary. Quick, brutal games designed to humiliate unsuspecting opponents. As he approaches Grace, she remains focused on a nearby match, seemingly unaware of the impending challenge. Victor stands next to her, a predatory smile playing on his lips as he interrupts her concentration. "Enjoying the games?" he asks, his voice laced with a hint of mockery. Grace looks up, meeting his gaze with a calm expression. "Yes, a little," she replies, her voice steady and composed. Victor's smile widens, sensing the perfect opportunity to assert his dominance. "Well, I'm Victor Sterling," he announces grandly, his chest puffed out with pride. "Club champion for the past 7 years." Grace offers a simple response. "Grace Sullivan," she says, neither impressed nor intimidated. Her words hang in the air, leaving Victor's self-assured grin faltering slightly. Unfazed, Victor presses on, now fully intent on humiliating her for the entertainment of the crowd. "Since you enjoy watching, perhaps you'd care to play a game. I so rarely get the chance to introduce newcomers to the finer points of chess." The surrounding members exchange knowing glances, their anticipation rising. This was typical of Victor, challenging someone, especially an outsider, to a quick match. It was his way of asserting his superiority. Everyone knew it was a show, an easy win, followed by a round of laughter and applause. But Grace isn't so easily swayed. "I'm waiting for someone," she says, her voice polite but firm. Victor isn't deterred. "Oh, it won't take long," he insists, his tone hardening. "Just a friendly game to pass the time." The crowd continues to watch, their eyes shifting between Grace and Victor. They've all gathered for one reason. They want to see Victor crush yet another unsuspecting opponent. The room hums with expectation, a quiet but palpable excitement in the air. Grace, sensing the tension in the room, hesitates for a moment. She considers her options. Refusing would only escalate the situation and make it more uncomfortable. It would draw more attention than she desires. Finally, she stands. "Very well, Mr. Sterling," she says, her tone unwavering. "One game." Victor's smile returns, wide and triumphant. "Excellent. Shall we?" He gestures toward a vacant table in the center of the room. As they walk toward the table, the club's heavy double doors swing open once more. A distinguished figure enters, Dr. Joseph Matthews, a man in his 70s, with glasses perched on his nose and kind eyes. He pauses when he sees the scene unfolding, scanning the room before his gaze lands on Grace. "Grace," he calls, a warm smile breaking across his face. He moves quickly toward her, his presence cutting through the tension. Victor's expression shifts. He hadn't expected this interruption. "I see you've met some of our members," Dr. Matthews says to Grace, his tone light but laced with concern. Victor, though, presses forward, determined to proceed with the game. "Just a friendly match," he assures Joseph with a practiced smile. "Welcome to our club." Joseph's gaze flickers between the two, sensing the challenge but choosing not to interfere. "Do you feel up to it, Grace?" he asks, his voice gentle. Grace looks up at Joseph, her face breaking into a soft smile. "It's just one game," she replies, her tone calm and resolute. Joseph steps aside, giving her space to proceed with the match. The tension in the room heightens as the crowd watches, their focus on the unfolding spectacle. Grace takes a seat, unhurried. The chessboard before her is pristine, the pieces arranged in their starting positions. The club's chandelier casts a warm glow over the table, and the quiet murmur of the onlookers fades into the background. Victor sits across from her, his smirk never fading as he watches her closely. "Ladies first," he says, gesturing toward the white pieces. Grace nods, her movements deliberate and graceful as she adjusts her chair. She reaches for the white pawn and moves it to e4, a standard opening move. It's simple, but her precision is unmistakable, a mark of someone who knows the game far more intimately than anyone in the room could have guessed. The crowd stirs. Victor responds quickly, moving his knight to f6 in a bid to control the center. But there's something about the way Grace moves her pieces. There's a quiet confidence in her touch, a familiarity that suggests years of experience. The onlookers can feel it. And just like that, the game begins, and the room falls silent. As the silence spread across the room, after Grace declared checkmate, the atmosphere in the Royal Gambit Chess Club became unbearably tense. The champion, Victor Sterling, who had been the reigning title holder for 7 years, sat frozen in his chair. His eyes, wide with disbelief, remained fixed on the chessboard as if hoping that somehow, miraculously, the pieces would rearrange themselves. He had been so certain of his victory, so sure that the simple woman who had walked into the club would be no match for him. But now here he was, defeated, his pride shattered, in front of an audience of high-profile chess players. Grace's victory wasn't just a tactical win. It was an awakening. For everyone in that room, it was a realization that true skill doesn't rely on titles or appearances. It's about the quality of one's mind, the quiet confidence that doesn't need to be announced to the world, the brilliance that exists in spaces not often given a platform. Victor slowly tipped his king over, signaling his defeat. The sound of it reverberated through the room like a bell tolling. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. The room, once buzzing with the quiet murmurs of the club's elite members, had gone completely still. Grace remained standing, her gaze steady but calm. Her face gave nothing away. She wasn't gloating, she wasn't even smiling. She simply accepted the moment for what it was. A game, a challenge, and an unexpected lesson for everyone involved. The members of the club looked at each other, unsure of what to say or do. Many had expected Victor to win easily. After all, he had been the club's champion for years. He was the master of the game, the one everyone looked up to. To see him humbled by a woman who had only just walked through the doors of the Royal Gambit felt surreal. Grace was no ordinary woman. There was something unassuming but powerful about her. She didn't carry herself with the arrogance of a seasoned champion, nor did she seek recognition. Her mastery spoke through her moves, not her words. The crowd, once skeptical, now regarded her with a different kind of respect. There was no longer any doubt that Grace Sullivan was more than just an outsider. She was a force to be reckoned with. Her eyes moved around the room, briefly meeting the gazes of a few of the members who watched her with awe. Without a word, she began resetting the chessboard, aligning the pieces with the same precision and care she had shown throughout the game. It was clear that, to her, this wasn't about showmanship or proving herself to anyone. She was simply doing what she loved, playing chess. Victor, meanwhile, couldn't bring himself to move. He was still sitting at the table, his eyes glued to the chessboard as if he expected the game to restart. His pride was wounded, but he also felt something else, a strange mix of admiration and frustration. How had he missed this? How had he been so blind to Grace's true abilities? He had dismissed her at the beginning, thinking that her simple appearance in the white dress meant she was nothing more than an innocent bystander. He had expected to embarrass her, to show her her place, to make her a spectacle for his entertainment. But now, as he sat in the aftermath of his loss, he realized just how wrong he had been. Grace Sullivan wasn't here to be humiliated. She was here to play chess, and she had shown him how it should be played. For what seemed like an eternity, Victor remained frozen in his seat, staring at the chessboard. His thoughts were racing, but his body refused to move. The room remained silent, save for the soft clinking of the chess pieces as Grace calmly set them back into position. Victor was still processing what had just happened. The shock, the disbelief, it was overwhelming. He had lost not only the game, but his sense of self-assurance. His dominance in the Royal Gambit had been challenged and broken by someone who, to the rest of the club, had been nothing more than a stranger. It was then that Joseph Matthews, the distinguished older man who had been observing the game from the sidelines, stepped forward. "Grace," he said, his voice carrying an unmistakable note of pride, "you've shown them all something they'll never forget." Grace didn't respond with any words. Instead, she simply nodded, acknowledging the compliment, but her demeanor remained unchanged. She wasn't here to seek validation. She was here for the game, and that was all that mattered. Victor, finally breaking the silence, slowly stood up from the table, his body stiff. The members of the club watched him, curious to see how he would respond. Would he accept defeat gracefully, or would he lash out in frustration? They had all seen Victor's arrogance in the past, but now it was gone. His usual bravado was replaced by something else: humility. "You're not just a chess player, are you?" Victor asked, his voice a little unsteady, his eyes meeting Grace's. "You're something more. You've been hiding your abilities." Grace didn't respond right away. She glanced down at the chessboard, running her fingers lightly over the pieces. Then, after a long pause, she said simply, "I play for the love of the game, not for the glory, not for the spotlight." Victor's face softened slightly, as if her words were starting to sink in. The realization that he had been so blind to her true capabilities hit him like a wave. She wasn't playing for status or recognition. She wasn't interested in being part of the club's elite circles. She was here to play chess, and she had done it better than anyone in the room. "Thank you for the lesson," Victor said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The words felt unfamiliar on his tongue, but they were sincere. There was no sarcasm, no ego left in him, just pure acknowledgement of the truth. Grace gave him a small, knowing smile. "No problem, Victor," she replied. "The game isn't about who you are or what you've done. It's about what you bring to the table in the moment." Victor stood up straight, feeling the weight of his own shortcomings. He had spent so many years cultivating his reputation, building his identity around being the club's champion. And yet, here was a woman who had walked in without a title or a pedigree, and she had dismantled him with ease. He had always thought that his position as champion meant something, but now he was beginning to understand that true mastery didn't require an audience. It didn't require an inheritance of titles or status. It came from something deeper, something quieter. Grace wasn't interested in playing for applause. She wasn't here for the public accolades. She wasn't even here to win. She was here because the game mattered to her, and that made all the difference. As Grace began to make her way toward the door, Joseph Matthews by her side, the other members of the club parted to let them pass. There was no applause, no fanfare, just a quiet sense of reverence for what they had just witnessed. Grace hadn't come to them for their approval, but in that moment she had earned it. She had earned the respect of everyone in the room, not with grand gestures or flashy moves, but with a quiet mastery that spoke for itself. Victor, still standing by the chessboard, watched them leave, his heart heavy with both admiration and defeat. He had been humbled, and it was a humbling he never expected. The game was over, but the lesson would stay with him forever. Before Grace reached the door, Victor called out to her. "Miss Sullivan," he said, his voice a little shaky, "I owe you an apology." Grace stopped and turned, meeting his gaze. She didn't say anything, but she could see in his eyes that he had finally come to understand the lesson she had just taught him. "I was unprofessional," Victor continued, his voice lower now. "I thought I could teach you a lesson. I thought I could show you your place, but you've shown me mine." Grace simply nodded. "Apology accepted, Mr. Sterling." With those words, she turned and walked out of the Royal Gambit, Joseph by her side. The door swung shut behind them, and the members of the club, who had been mere spectators up until that moment, now stood with a newfound respect for Grace, a woman who had come to their esteemed club without fanfare, without title, and without expectation. And in doing so, she had delivered the greatest lesson they would ever learn. As Victor remained behind, staring at the chessboard, a strange thought crossed his mind. Perhaps chess wasn't about winning at all. Maybe it was about understanding, about learning to respect your opponent, about knowing when to step back and acknowledge that there are greater minds than your own. And in that moment, Victor understood. The game had changed, and so had he.